Hello, hello, hello. It's your pal Mike Squires, and this is the Couchress Podcast, once again with episode number 235. 235. And my guest, the massively talented Rev Jones. Rev Jones is certainly one of the wildest bass players I've ever seen perform live. He has performed, toured, recorded with the likes of, he was in the last lineup of Mountain and then went on to be the bass player for Leslie West as he became a solo artist. He played with Michael Schenker in the Michael Schenker group. I mean, you could stop right there, but the list goes on. He's recorded with Paul Gilbert, George Lynch, toured with Steelheart. He is also, aside from being wildly talented and a very dynamic player, he puts on. My man is not afraid to perform. He's not shy on stage. I encourage you to go and check out some performances from Rev. I had a really, really great time talking with him. Not afraid to dish dirt. Not afraid to get into it. Rev still lives in Oklahoma where he grew up. I think that's very cool. Guys like him, guys like Miles Kennedy, still living in Spokane. Like, that's where he's comfortable. And you can travel wherever, from anywhere. That's the one good thing about globalism, isn't it? Again, I had a very good time talking with Rev. I encourage you to go follow him. Check out his website. He put out a solo record last year. He's also a great singer. Hopefully, and we have laid the plans for him to perform a pretty ambitious song as a Couchress video. So hopefully I'll actually be able to pull that off. It's probably more ambitious than, it's certainly more ambitious in time signature wise and dynamics than Starship Trooper. Starship Trooper was probably the most difficult thing that I've done with this show. But if anyone could be a part of a Couchress band that could pull it off, Rev Jones is the guy. Go check it out. Please do. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. If you are enjoying the Couchress Podcast, please, by all means, I invite you to support Couchress on Patreon, patreon.com/Couchress. You can get in there. You can get in there for $5 a month. What that does is it makes this possible. Absolutely. There are a lot of costs that go into making Couchress, and that's what it takes care of. So anyone that's already supporting Couchress, thank you so much. I very, very much appreciate it. If you look at the YouTube channel right now and you go to the performance video playlist, there are 80 performance videos. Some of those are the old style. Most of them are quarantine videos. I'm hoping to move back toward doing some more in the original format on the couch with guests. That is part of the plan for 2023, and maybe doing some hybrid where some of them are pre-recorded tracks from actual players that record their parts, probably drummers, because that's the hardest thing. It's hard to get a drummer to play from the couch, right? Unless they're doing percussion. So thank you so much for your support. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Variety Coffee Roasters. Variety Coffee Roasters in Brooklyn, New York, is a boutique coffee roaster with a wide variety of coffee offerings. I drink Variety every single morning. That's the honest to God truth. I drank 2 pots of it this morning, which is why I'm so excitable now. What greater compliment can I give a product than to use it? None, is what I'd say. Go check it out. VarietyCoffeeRoasters.com, at Variety Coffee Roasters on their social media. I'm hoping to actually do some Couchress videos in their roastery. Go check it out. I drink High Hopes. It's a single origin Ethiopian coffee roasted a little darker than roasted for espresso, but I brew it as a Chemex. So it's a lot more accessible than other single origin Ethiopian coffees might be, if you are just getting into, fancy coffee. Anyway, go drink variety coffee. It's fucking great. Don't forget the golden rule. Treat people the way you want to be treated. It's not that hard. And think about how great would the world be if people just treated each other like that.
Hey!
What's happening? 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, exactly. Just over. Wait, you got to throw in a 9 there somewhere.
Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great.
What's the weather like there?
It's cold as shit, man. It's cold. And not as cold as it has been. I think it's colder in Seattle right now, which is where I spent a lot of my adult life, and which is incidentally where I met you once before. I would not expect you to remember, although because I'm a buddy of Tom's, and Tom had me and a friend on the bus after the show.
I remember you. Yeah, I remember you.
That's a very professional response.
It's the microphone. The microphone gave it away. That's what I remember.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I remember being struck by, well, first of all, your performance, your playing, and your physical presence on stage is wild and over the top. And then like hanging out after the gig was just real mellow.
That's me.
Right.
Mellow.
So since, every couple months since then, I've thought, I wonder who that dude was. And I finally looked you up, and then I was like, I gotta get a hold of this dude and get him on the podcast. And then,
definitely. I'm glad you did.
Like a lot of things, it goes on and on and on and on. And I finally did. And you said, yeah. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. For folks who are not aware of who you are, they very well may have seen you play before, but it seems odd that that wouldn't be memorable for them. You've played with a number of bands. The band I saw you with was Michael Schenker.
Yeah.
And what a treat. But you played with Leslie West as well. And those are two of, if you ask a lot of guitar players, they'll say, those two guys will be in their very top guitarists.
Definitely. Yeah. Hell, it's funny that I played with Schenker first. And then when I started playing with Leslie, I came back to do some tours with Michael, and we would be like waiting to do a sound check, and he would walk over and tell me about Leslie. And I would go, what? You know Leslie, what am I going to tell you? No, tell me about Leslie. He would, just like Michael would never show it. He could be talking to, any level of guitar player, and he's still Michael Schenker. He would never show the fan side. It wouldn't matter if he's talking to Jeff Beck, who obviously everybody loves. He would still hold that, I'm Michael Schenker. But then whenever he would turn around and tell me about Leslie, So he was like a kid, a fan too, But yeah, it was that was one lucky thing in my career that I played with, so many great people like, Leslie and Michael, Paul Gilbert, and George Lynch, all these great players that I grew up listening to. I was a huge Mountain fan. I was a huge UFO fan, obviously, And so getting to play with them, I actually had to do the same thing that I was saying about Michael. I would, here I am playing with these guys, and I had to not be starstruck. I had to look at it like, oh yeah, that's my guitar player, but deep inside I'm like, play with Leslie West,
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah. But And Leslie was great. I played with him all the way up until he passed away. I was the last bass player in Mountain. It was me and him and Corky, and then Leslie lost his leg. That was actually going to be the last Mountain show, and the show didn't happen because he had to go and have his leg removed. But then after that, when we continued on, it was just for a while it was just me and Leslie, no drummer, and then we got Bobby Rondinelli and did that for up until he passed away. So, and then we were going in the studio. We were supposed to start 2 weeks whenever he passed away. 2 weeks later is when we were going to start doing what was going to be his last album, which was, like a collection of Mountain and his solo stuff and West Bruce Lang and, just like, so, like the best of his career, but we were going to do them how we do them now, make them, because a lot of those songs Felix sang, they were in higher keys, because he had that, the airy kind of voice. So when Leslie sings them, they're a little lower and, and he would, sing it with that, that big voice of his. So they sounded different, and we kind of cut some parts out that he didn't like in the originals, or there's a couple of parts, Nantucket Sleigh Ride, when it goes to the middle, doo-doo, down, down, da, doo-doo, the little break, it's up in A, and he always hated that, and they did it because it's got the keyboards with the flute and all that,
Yeah.
But when we do it live, we would do it, we drop it into E so it sounded heavier, so all those little changes that we do live, we're going to be on this album, and it was going to be his final recording. And unfortunately, we didn't get to do that. But after he passed away, since everything was already, they'd already started doing all the licensing and everything. So we decided to turn it into a tribute to Leslie. And we had, a bunch of great players. Steve Morse is on it. George Lynch is on it. It goes on and on. I think Jolyn Turner sang a couple. Ronnie, that sings with MSG now, he sang a couple. It came out. Slash is on there with that Mark kid from Dirty Honey. He sings.
Yeah.
So King Bay's on a song. Yeah. And it all came out great. Really, Ronnie sounds the best of all the guys on there. Ronnie Romero. I knew of him, but I'd never really heard him before. And when I first heard, the first song I heard, I think that he did was Why Don't You? And I was like, he just had that big power voice. I was like, all right.
You're like, why don't you sing some more?
Yeah. But he does like 2 or 3, and Jolyn Turner does 2 or 3. A bunch of people on there. But if you haven't heard it, you should go check it out.
Most definitely will. Yeah. So
it's very cool. Me and Bobby did all the rhythms except for one song, Dee Snider and Mike Portnoy, and I think Rudy Sarzo's on that song, and they did the one song separate from the whole thing that went on there, but the rest is me and Bobby, and it came out great.
Awesome.
Wish Leslie would have been there, but
yeah. I want to back way up, because if I'm to understand, you were born, raised, and continue to live in Oklahoma.
Yep.
Which seems like an unlikely place for someone to remain and tour from. Although, as a touring musician, I understand the appeal of probably living there and not living in New York or Los Angeles. So I want to start there. Like, were you born in Oklahoma? Have you lived elsewhere? Yeah. And what kind of an influence do you think being and remaining in Oklahoma has had on you as a musician?
Well, yeah, I'm from here. I've always lived here. I used to go to California and stay when I was in different bands. I'd go out and, stay a couple of months there and, get things going, whatever. But I'd always come back here. So I never really moved away from here. I like it better here. It's cheaper. it doesn't matter where you live. People always go, oh, yeah, but you go to Hollywood, there's all this to do, but you still go to the same 2 bars, same 3,
That's
4
right.
restaurants, same grocery store, you know. So, and I don't know why anybody would want to live somewhere that you have to work 80 hours a week just to afford to live in a 1-room apartment with 4 other people. Yeah, you know, not very
Amen.
comfortable, you know. But at one time I thought about moving, but I actually got more career wise living here, you know, because if you're going on tour with somebody, everything's a plane ride away, you know. So
Right.
I mean, like with MSG, we would usually start in California because there'd be a couple of rehearsals, but everybody's going to fly there. Nobody lived in LA, you know, so everybody would fly to wherever we were starting, you know. And it's no different than, you know, any other band. Play with Steelheart, same deal. Everybody lived in different states, you know. You fly out. So I mean, it seems odd, but there's a lot of people that are well-known musicians that live here. You know, people like Jerry Cantrell,
Right.
John Humphrey from Seether, you know, all these guys I grew up with, that, you know, Greg Upchurch, you know, all these guys that, you know, I grew up playing in little bars and stuff with, you know. Then everybody kind of took off and did their thing. Everybody still lives here, you know.
Right.
But, and as for the influence, I think it kind of made it better in a way because, you know, we used to go to LA and see all the bands, and they were great bands, but every time I went and seen bands there, they never it was like, with the exception of those early 80s, you know, the Motley Crue and, you know, all those bands, they all had this cool look and this cool stage thing, you know, because they were having to, because of Van Halen and Quiet Riot and all those bands prior to them, you know.
Sure.
They were so amazing on stage. But once that passed, every time I went to LA and seen bands, they were so lame, you know. Everybody, and not saying that they were lame bands, but they just kind of stood there and, you know, they were trying to go with this, you know, kind of the Guns N' Roses thing in a sense, you know, like the bad boy image more so than,
brooding.
you know, yeah. Then I mean, I would rather, personally, I'd rather see David Lee Roth jumping around doing his thing than, you know, some depressed guy just standing there. You know, it's whether, it doesn't matter who's the better band, who's more entertaining. You know,
Sure.
and so, but living in Oklahoma, you had to be like that. I mean, if you went to any club here or any club in Texas, you know, all the way up, you know, up into Ohio, you know, we used to go up and play at Annie's in Cincinnati and, you know, Bogart's and all these places, go out and play Hammerjacks on the East Coast, you know. But the one thing is, all the bands like in Dallas and Houston and here, everybody was good on stage. You know, you had all the guys in Pantera. I used to go see them when they were playing covers, you know,
Right.
and it was the same show. I mean, they were still, it was like going to see Judas Priest or something, you know. There was just stacks of amps, and they were up there just, you know, just killing, you know. And Phil was the most amazing frontman there was, you know. And so I think that helped me because you had to be good, you know. I mean, even I remember my first bands, I was already playing over the neck and, you know, spinning my head in a circle with this stupid thing on top of my head, swinging around and, you know, jumping around, acting like an idiot. I was trying to be Pete Way, you know, because I
Right.
loved UFO so much, but I loved Pete Way. He'd just stand there, you know, and his leg rocking, and, you know, Steve Harris, that's where he got his whole gimmick from, you know. It's exactly like Pete Way, you know, but people don't think about it because Iron Maiden got so big and UFO didn't, you know. But
Right.
so I think living here had a lot to do with that part of it, and also because of the music part of it, you know, because I played in country bands. Yeah, when I was a teenager, I played a speed metal band, you know, and then on the weekends, 5 days a week, I played country, you know,
Is that right?
and it was real country. I mean, back then you couldn't, you know, we all had long hair. You kind of put it up in a hat, you know, and you weren't allowed to play any rock at all. You know, we would sneak in like Ice Cream Man, you know, sometimes Tush would get snuck in there, but that was about as heavy and rock as you could get, you know.
Now there's
And
a ton of crossover because
now there's
lots
no
of
country in
rock.
country.
Well, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
But back in the 80s, you could, like, in the Northwest or up here, anywhere like Texas, Oklahoma, Tennessee, like anywhere down there, you couldn't fuck around and play half-ass country, right?
No, you had to be. I mean, you had to be a country band. I mean, it's funny. The guys I was in the band with, there was a drummer and a guitar player. They had a metal band called Power Lord. They were from California, and actually Bob had played in Slayer before their first album. You know, he'd went to school with them, and David quit, and he played for him for a while. So the first time I heard Slayer, then I started playing country with these guys, and they were playing me cassette tapes of, you know, those guys playing Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, and, you know.
Yeah.
And it was pretty cool. But so here's these metal guys from Southern California, you know, they played country all their lives because their dad was a country singer. So you got them, this crazy guy with the stupid thing on his head, tattoos, being me. And our singer was actually a cowboy, you know. He was an older guy, and he sung country all his life. So that's how we got by with it, you know. We didn't stand out. If we wouldn't have had that cowboy singing, they probably would have liked it, you know. But
Right.
That was in the day, you know. It's funny because, like, Toby Keith, at the time, people didn't know him. He was in a band called Easy Money. He played like on a circuit where, you know, they'd play, you know, the week after us. Everywhere we'd play, they would play, you know. And, you know, that you had to be a cowboy, you know.
Right.
That had a big influence on me musically, because it didn't pigeonhole me into, you know, like, only I'm a metal guy or I'm a rock guy or, you know, whatever. I don't really care. I'll play disco. I love every kind of music, you know. And I know people that won't, you know, they won't even play cover songs, you know, because it's like, you know, I do my own songs, and, well, it's stupid, you know. A song is a song.
You know what I like to do? I like to use the bathroom indoors. I like to sleep indoors, and so I'll play anything if it perpetuates my ability to do those things.
Oh yeah, well, I used to tell people all the time. I said, I'm in all kinds of cover bands. One of them's called Michael Schenker Group. One of them's called Steelheart. One's Leslie West Mountain. I mean, they're all cover bands to me because, you know, because those guys wrote the songs, you know.
Right.
So it doesn't matter. I mean, I know people that are like that, and they're, you know, they won't play any cover. They think it's degrading, but getting paid to play music is like, you know, getting paid to play baseball or a video game or something. You know, you had to have enjoyed it long enough to get good at it.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you want to, you know, keep getting paid? I mean, I'd go play for, you know, Lady Gaga and wear a dress if that was what the job was, you know, because it's all about music, you know, and making money is one thing, you know. So, but
probably pretty comfortable too. Gets pretty sweaty up. I mean, probably want to wear. I probably wouldn't go free underneath my skirt, my dress.
Well, I'd go mini. It would be a mini though.
Yeah, you're proud of your legs. Is electric bass your first instrument, or did you play in school band or anything like that?
No, I mean, I started like everybody in my dad's side of the family plays guitar. Like my grandma, my grandpa, all my uncles, they would sit around and play all the time. So, and my dad played and he sang. So throughout my life, I'd learn chords on a guitar, but I'd lose interest. You know, I didn't really, you know, he would show me chords and I'd like it. And, you know, a month later, I might grab the other guitar and, you know, try to strum along with him, you know, but I really had no interest because I was an athlete. So I loved music. I always went to concerts starting when I was a little bitty kid. And, but I was an athlete, so I was more into that. And which that's another thing that the advantage there is I learned how to get better, you know, because I was really good. And so I learned how to practice and how to, you know, learn things, you know, that not get frustrated. So whenever I started, I decided when I decided to start playing, I was like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. You know, I stop wrestling, stop playing baseball, you know, and within months, I was, you know, already good. You know, I had a jump start because I already knew chords in a way, you know, not really. I mean, probably couldn't play a song, all the way through, but I had a kickstart on it. But I mean, within 2 months, I was already playing in a band, and we were okay. We just playing on Crazy Train and Paranoid and Dockin, whatever was out at the time.
Right.
And so, but that right there also made it speedier process because I was in a band, so we practiced every day, and so I'd learn the songs that we had, and then we'd keep learning more songs, and next thing you know, it was the late '90s, and I was playing. I'd been on tour, for a while, and I was like thinking back, wow, this all started in a garage, behind a donut shop.
Is that really where you practiced?
Yeah, I mean, first couple of times was in a house, but then when I officially joined that band, there was this donut shop, and there was a house behind it, and the drummer in the band, his uncle made donuts there in the morning, and so he got free rent at this house, and so we practiced in this garage, and it's actually now it's like a Harley Davidson shop or something, but it's like it's kind of a funny thing, because every day we'd go to rehearse, and there was all the leftover donuts, So luckily we didn't get
well, that's great for a starving musician too.
Yeah, exactly. So
and so that's crazy that 2 months, I mean 2 months owning a bass, and you were in a band. When was your first gig, and how did you feel? Like, tell me about your first gig.
So, well, the first gig I actually played rhythm guitar, because this band I got in, they had a bass player, and he was real good, and they needed another guitar player, so I played rhythm guitar for I guess one show, maybe. It might have been, but it was like a party, like a big house party. I think maybe two of them. And then I got lucky that the bass player had a job, and this is high school, so he had a job that he had to work weekends. So, and there was this club in town. So Thursday nights they did a battle of the bands. Friday, Saturday there was a band that played, both nights. Whoever won the battle of the bands got the weekend after. Yeah. So if you won, then the next week you got to play Friday, Saturday. So we did that, and ended up that for the next 2 months we opened for every band that played Friday, Saturday. That have us open, for a case of beer or something,
Right.
And we'd play one set. So so for like 2 months we played 2 shows a week, and I was playing bass, but and I was using, it was funny because I was using his bass because I had a okay guitar and a crappy bass, so I'd use his, and it was this, it was like an Explorer bass, it was like a,
right.
I think it was a cheap one. It was like an Arbor, but it was like maybe like lightning bolts or something cool down it. It was very colorful and big, but it was it was a cool bass compared to what I had. So we did that for a couple of months, and then I got like a PV bass or something, and then the band changed, and everything kept evolving, but yeah, I was pretty quick that I was, but I always had this. I always had this musical ear. Yeah. I mean, we just did. Yeah, we didn't even have. I don't think we ever had an original in that particular band. But from that band, so my next band, we wrote all our songs, kind of sound like Iron Maiden. It's funny, we actually did a 2-song demo that never came out until this year, I guess. It'd been because the demo had surfaced. I put it on YouTube a long time ago or something, and so this some guys in Greece kept writing me over the years, wanting to put it out, but it was 2 songs. How are you going to re-release 2 songs? But so I had a live video of 4 songs from that sounded great. I mean, it was mono, but because it was on a old VHS camera, but
Yeah.
it sounded great. So we finally came around to, they put it out early this year, so it's got the, remastered the 2 songs and then 4 songs live and, some pictures and whatever I could,
Sure.
pull up, but so it's funny that finally came out, after
That's
that was
awesome.
in 86 when we did that, and, we were poor. We were poor kids. We went into a studio. It was, they were running a special, $200. You got 2 hours and you got to do 2 songs, and they gave you 2 cassette copies because they would just, record over the same 2-inch tape every time.
Right.
So you couldn't go back and do anything, so this particular band was called Legion Marcher, and we actually weren't even together anymore. And the guys that always were like our crew guys, our roadies, they put up the $200 because none of us had, so we went in there and played these 2 songs, first take, doing everything live except for the solos and the backup vocals. And so we did the songs, recorded it, went in, mixed it. It was a little faster because our drummer used the house set, so it was already mic'd up and already sounded good.
Right.
The compressors, everything, the gates, everything was perfect on it. So we finished mixing the 2 songs, and he goes, "Well, we got an hour and 15 minutes left. You guys want to
Wait a minute.
do another?" Yeah.
So
we
it
did
was
that.
like
And,
you just played the songs first take and done.
Yeah. So we played through them first take, and then we went back and ran a take. We did backup vocals and the guitar solos at the same time. So it's 2 takes to it, and then mixed it, and it was done. So 45 minutes, 2 songs done. And they were like, "Well, if you got another $100, we can do another song." We're like, "We don't have any more money." So those 2 guys got the original cassettes, and everybody had a copy.
Right.
And so over the years, nobody has one of those original tapes. Because who's thinking about it when you're 16 years old? You're just playing it for everybody. That tape's just getting wore down.
Yeah.
But I happened to have, I had one that was probably still 3rd or 4th generation. And I got smart years ago when people first started going digital and stuff, that we put it onto made a WAV file out of it. And so that way I already had it.
Right.
Because I had that cassette now, and I'm so scared to put that cassette in anything, because it'd probably just snap, But luckily I did that, so we put it out. But then, so that band never did anything. But that evolved into me playing in a band called Forte that, I did several albums with, toured. And the singer in that Legion Marcher band also sang in Forte, on the 2nd album, so it was like a thing that, kind of kept evolving with, but none of those guys in those bands, none of them do anything. They still, they still play around or anything, but they haven't never really had bands, and they just kind of stopped when we stopped, and it's weird. I meet a lot of people in life that's what, yeah, I used to play in bands, and then I just kind of stopped,
I do not understand that. I mean, I understand it. I've stopped, or I've pushed pause a number of times in my life, but they've always been less happy times in my life. What's the longest?
I mean, it's like me, it's like me. I mean, I work with George Thorogood as his guitar tech, on tour. I'm his guitar tech. I play, a couple of songs off stage, whenever he's not playing, he's just singing, I'm playing on the side, and that's kind of a cool gig, because I also, this year I filled in a few shows playing bass, and, a couple years ago I played guitar at a show with him,
Right.
But, and I started doing that. I used to always kind of do stuff like that when I wasn't touring playing. I'd try to get I worked for a lighting company, so I'd go out, I did lights for Thorogood for years, when I wasn't playing. And so after my boy was born, it had already got to where I was playing at Stillheart. playing with Leslie West still, but Leslie would only do a few shows. Stillheart, it was always fly dates and, never that much, and so in order to keep doing that, then you got to have some kind of income. And
right, no one's going to employ you full
so,
time if you
yeah,
need to leave for a week
yeah.
or two here and there.
And I got lucky that, they called me and said, hey, you want to come, do the guitar, be a guitar tech? And I mean, the pay is twice as much as what I make playing,
Well,
so
that's what I was just going to say too. Like, let's not, spoiler alert for people listening who are not aware of this. Techs, are, they make more bread.
Yeah. I mean,
especially if you've got a good gig.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, this is a great gig. I mean, and I still play, I don't think that at my age and I don't really want to go out and like try to start a new thing, like, I put out solo albums and stuff, but I can't, and I have the band Vontae, but we all live in different places. So it's something that is written, online basically, we send each other files and, write like that. And it's a cool band. These are, it's all cool stuff. And I do gigs around here, but I couldn't see putting together a new thing from start, going out and playing, a bunch of free shows just to get it going and try. I mean, I don't even see. I mean, it's fun to play.
That's a young person's game.
Yeah,
starting.
I'd rather
band.
go out. And, I'd rather go put a wig on and sing or play bass in a disco band, and make money and go home and sleep in my own bed than I would to put a new original band together and go out and pay a bunch of money to open. It's
I think the bottom line is
it's funny.
If like, how much do you love to play music? How much of loving to play music is related to the energy you put off and the energy you get back?
Yeah.
And what do you want from music? If you
exactly.
If you want to be adored and be a star, that's a tough road.
Well, and it's then you run into the problem with how music is today with, it's like you used to put out an album and, you'd sell them, it was easy to promote, you'd make money. And, now nobody buys albums, you put it out and you still have to have them because you're still going to sell, a couple of thousand copies of your album, but, even the downloads, nobody really pays for downloads anymore because they, have Apple Music or Spotify or one of them and then it sucks because you can get, 10,000 streams or 1 million streams and you don't make no money,
right.
Because it's very little what you actually get paid. So in a sense, it also takes away that drive to even want to write another song, I mean, it's like I have, I put out a year ago, I put out my last album. It is great. And, it did okay. I mean, it's still, it still sells copies. It's still, I still get, a few cents here and there from Spotify and,
sure.
places like that. But, and I still have, I think 3 songs that I didn't put on it that I'm still going to release as singles or whatever. But it's when I sat down to like even start, thinking about working on it, it's like the drive is gone because I know I'm going to put all this work into it. And then, it's pointless to even almost pointless to even sell albums. It'd be better to just keep putting songs out and, where they're free. Here, download it, take it because you don't make any money that way, so it's weird because it used to be, he didn't make any money touring, but you had to tour to sell albums, then it changed. Right. All right, now we don't make any money off albums. We got to, now we tour because we make money, but then some of those bands don't even get that. And then it becomes, I got to sell merch just to, and it kind of runs the whole thing, and plus on top of that, and it's probably something that everybody's sick and tired of hearing, but because I'm kind of sick of hearing a lot of people talk about it too, but then you go to see these bands and there's 90% track, so the bands that are touring aren't
Yeah.
even playing. And it's funny because I know I'm personal friends and have been standing there at Monitor World seeing how many tracks people use, and
Same.
I could probably make a huge filing cabinet full of bands that you would never ever
There's a shocking
believe.
number.
Oh yeah, and they all use it. And it's funny because I see people and they'll defend, Motley Crue and this and that. Motley Crue doesn't. The only thing that's coming through the PA is Vince, because he doesn't sing the same words all the time, so they can't get him to lip sync. And
Well,
Mick,
they didn't have to put Mick. But they didn't have to put Mick through the PA because he had 16 live guitar cabinets.
Yeah, and and there are a bunch of guitars obviously on there, but Nicky never plays. I mean, I remember DJ Will from KDC. He did a review of the Motley Crue show like a couple of years ago, and his comment was, "I liked it better when Nicky acted like he played bass, because they started red hot and he got mad and threw his bass down. So all you hear is bass and drums, and Nicky storms off, And
Ooh.
I understand. Hey, Nicky wrote all the songs. I don't think that he played on the records. He might have played on some,
Right.
but when I listen to those albums, I clearly hear different bass players on the songs. It stands out to me.
So.
But
yeah.
But it doesn't matter. He's smart. He wrote the songs. Who cares if he played on it? Most people didn't play on the, I mean, everybody was so into Whitesnake when they got huge, but none of the guys in the band played on the album.
Right.
I mean, everybody's like Tommy Aldridge. Yeah. And I love Tommy and he's awesome, but that was all Ainsley Dunbar,
Yeah.
but nobody thinks of it that way. But it sucks that you go see these bands and they have all these tracks. And then it gets even more confusing because they say, oh, well, we're only using them for this and only for this. But I mean, I understand if you're going to have keyboards and you don't want a keyboard player,
Right.
But once you start using tracks, never fails that, you use a little more. You use a little more.
We're gonna add a little background vocals to sweeten the deal.
And then next thing you know, people start lip syncing. And I've witnessed it firsthand. I've witnessed it in bands that I used to play in, when I go see them and I'm like, really? There's actually in one band that I've seen videos, I hear my voice in the backing track. I'm not going to say who that is, but so it's, you never know. And it's not, you can say it's cheating or not, but it's not that it's, if you're using all the extra stuff to make it sound better, it's one thing. But even then, if 4 people can't play the song, you really don't deserve to, because even bands like the Scorpions and stuff, they have all these backing tracks with guitars and everything and some vocals. Klaus still sings, they all still play, but they have that. And when James Kotak was in the band, he actually said something. I asked him about it. He was saying that those guys kind of got it in their head that, well, we have to compete with the young bands. They're going to sound like the record. So they have tracks. So, we have to. And the Scorpions never needed them in the first place. So why do they need them now? And they don't. It doesn't make it sound any better,
Right.
I mean, it doesn't make it sound worse, but it's missing that cool live thing, because no matter what, when you have a track, you're stuck to this machine, It's got to be like this. You can't do this, and you can't, it loses the vibe,
Do you think there's a straight line between that experience, seeing a band live on stage, using tracks with consistently perfect, laser tight background vocals? Can you draw, in your mind, can you draw a straight line from that to, well, look at how we make records today? Nobody goes in cuts live. Nobody does that.
Yeah. And it's funny because the few bands, every now and then you hear stuff and you're like, wow, that's cool, because it's kind of gets this vibe of that, it's like some people still do that. Some people still, still play live,
breathable.
Everybody does it differently. Even the way I do my albums, the last thing I do is the drums. The drummer,
is that right?
Jeff, comes in, he plays to the song done, basically. And the reason I do it is because if he played something slightly different than how the fill is, and I was playing to him, it would change the feel of the song without me noticing it,
Right.
And when I wrote the songs, I kind of had this feel. So that's one of the reasons I do it. Plus, that way he's playing drums. It's a straight track. And if there's nothing in this spot, he can do a fill. He knows, oh, there's nothing here in this spot. He can also do any drum fill or part that would throw somebody off playing to it. He can add that, and it's not going to throw me off.
Right.
But I mean, a lot of people did that. Michael Schenker, he's always done it that way. The first time I recorded with him, we get into the studio, all the guitars done, all the solos, everything. It's just a click and him playing.
Is that right?
He always did it analog, back in the analog days. That's why on that first album, Simon Phillips came in, him and Mo Foster came in and did all the rhythm tracks. All the guitar was done, and which is why Armed and Ready, when it comes that first break, dun, to pa dun, to pa dun, it's that weird feel that it's hard to catch, And Michael never wanted anybody to play it. He always wanted them to play it different, to where it had a cue, da da da, coming into the part, because it's so odd. And I didn't understand it at first until I recorded with him, and then realized, he didn't play to that riff. He played to a click, so he was just holding the note. Are you high tonight? And started, going into the part. And so whenever that part is played, now it throws him off. He's have to look at the drummer because, otherwise he's going to be sitting there just tapping his foot,
Right.
So there are cool things about, recording that way. But what gets me about some of these people that, they're like, oh, we got to have all these backup vocals. So we have to make it sound this way. Like I seen something the other day with Blackie Lawless talking about the reason, because he got caught, with all these lead vocals on his track on this new tour. So he was defending himself, and, I don't really know what he's using on there, but he was talking about he had to add the vocals and stuff because it sounded thin to him, because that's how it was on the album. Well, I think back to bands like Queen, they didn't have tracks. They sang, and the keyboard player that was off stage sang all the backups, and they just did them as a three-piece, it didn't matter, Fat Bottom Girls or whatever. It was how it was,
Right.
There's, stacked vocals on, when you listen to the album. They didn't do it. The only thing that they did a track was when they would do Bohemian Rhapsody. They come to the middle and they just play the whole track,
Right.
which isn't the same as, them trying to act like they're really singing this part, And that's what's awesome, is because you go see those guys. That's the beauty of, like, Freddie Mercury. He was pitchy as hell, and if he couldn't hit the note, he wouldn't even do it. He'd go to this note. But it was that voice and that, he was so talented as a singer.
What a
Who
badass.
cares?
What a bad
Yeah, and
motherfucker.
it was beautiful. If they would have auto-tuned him, it would have, it would have been awful, because everything would have been just, would have lost that vibe. It's like the Beatles,
Have
I
you
obviously love.
right?
The
Have you
thing about them
listened
is
to on this subject? Have you listened to
Yeah.
the quantized Van Halen tracks that are floating around on
No.
YouTube?
No.
It's fucking wild. There are, like, people take a song, drop it into a DAW,
Yeah.
and then do to it what people do to music when they record it now. And when you listen back, you're like, it doesn't hit you over the head. You're like, well, this is that song, but why does it kind of suck? Like, it kind of sucks,
well-
but I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, and it's that, it's funny. It's like it's that live thing. That's what's awesome. Like that Get Back, the Beatles thing that came out.
Fuck.
And,
so good.
and it was long, and it was hard to, it's hard to watch in one setting, but seeing how they just wanted to do these songs live like they always did, and that's the beauty of them, is that they would be doubling each other, to sing in unison, and you could still tell it was two voices. So that means one of them was a little flat, a little sharp, And that's what's the beauty about it. If they were to pull them exactly in where it's, all the notes are like this, it's the same with tuning, in the old days, you would tune to the piano in the studio. You go over,
Right.
And so song to song, if they weren't done the same day or even in the same studio, that, you'd have to tune to that. So you had, there was a lot of stuff out of tune, and there's a lot of stuff that I still hear whenever they started first digitally remastering stuff. And the first things that I noticed was that a lot of the vocal parts that I thought were more amazing than they weren't, because you could hear, oh, wow, he didn't quite make it to that note. But whenever you heard it in the original form, it sounded like a band, it sounded live. Everything's, just perfect.
Because of the
now,
way it sat in the,
when it's
the way that it
actually
sat
perfect,
in the mix with the original
Yeah.
version.
Yeah. Now that it's actually perfect and they've done this, it's like, oh, that's weird, And it does kind of hurt me. It's funny because on the topic of how the old way and how it used to just work perfect, that there's a song, Blood of the Sun. It's a Leslie West Mountain song. So it's down, 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 and he just steps up, right? Well, for years, I'd always try to get that, and I'd listen, and I could hear, oh yeah, he's doing this. So Leslie's hitting a B, Felix is hitting a C. Then Leslie goes up to a C, and Felix drops to a B. So they're just a half step off, and it's kind of like this. And I said something to Leslie because playing that, it never sounded right. And I always just played my thing anyway. And he said, yeah, Felix was always into these dissonant notes, is how he would describe it. And it took me years to figure out why it was. And then I finally sat down and I listened. And when Felix was a little out of tune on that string. So when he was on a C and Leslie was on a B, he was a little flat. So he was closer to the note. So it just sounded a little out. And then when he goes to the B and he's up to C, now he's a little farther from it. And so that's actually what was causing this, because they're just going down, 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 kind of going through it. So it's not sustained where you would notice it. And it creates this, I don't even know what, it's like like this mean thing that happens, whenever, like anytime you hit something that's a little bit out.
Tension.
It just, it's like, oh shit, but it's great. I mean, that's the beauty of it. I mean, if you go watch an orchestra, they're all out of tune from each other. I mean, because there's no frets
piano is out of tune
them,
from itself.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh
naturally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because you're naturally in tune with, they tune the C's and then everything else is done by pitch, Oh yeah.
Right.
Just like a guitar. Working with George Thorogood, which there's one of his guitars, whenever I'm, when I'm tuning his guitars, I have to, the open string ones, I have to tune them by ear. I tune the G string, then I have to tune everything from the G string by ear. Because if you tune it directly, all the notes are in tune, and you hit an open chord, it's not going to sound right. It's going to be out. No matter what, the B string, when you open G tuning, the B string is always going to seem sharp. So you got to flatten it a little bit. You got to tune it to where, right when you feel that, there it is. And it's still a little out, but it's naturally sounds better all the way up. Just like, if you see somebody trying to play Running with the Devil, down, 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 it always sounds weird because Eddie dropped that D a little bit.
Right.
So it would be in tune, not in tune with the chord. It would be in tune with those notes, And so it's funny. It's like, so, I got to do it perfect. They watch, if you're editing a song and you're watching all the hits on these WAV files, they move them. Oh, well, it sounds right, but it doesn't look right. Well, stop looking at it.
Well, I mean, when did the stage tuner come along? Because back then it was like your tech had a strobe tuner. There you go. That's it. That's what you get.
Yeah.
There wasn't like a Boss tuner hanging out in 1978
well, even
on
then,
stage.
Yeah, and even then, like even a Boss tuner, you said, you can take all the Boss tuners and you can hook them all up, and some of them are going to be off from each other. There's unless you get like a good Peterson, they're, some of them are going to be off, as long as they all match everybody on the stage, So we used to have to do that because we traveled so much with Michael Schenker, flying to different countries, that you had a step down transformer to get 118. So sometimes you're getting 115, sometimes you're getting 119, So your delay settings are going to be a little off. going to be a little off. And so if somebody's running theirs on a battery, it's going to be correct because it's pulling that much voltage. But when it's coming through there, it's hit and miss on it. So we had to go, we went through a lot of that, on tour, just making sure, having to go through and check everybody, And this is when I was just playing.
Did you guys all switch over to batteries then?
Well, I had a cord, so mine was always right. Schenker always had a battery in his. The keyboard player, we got him to use his battery too, But whenever you're using it in a power supply, it can alter it, And it did alter my delay settings on my bass solo. I had to write down the voltage. I'd meter it each day, and then I'd figure out what the actual milliseconds were for this part of my solo, and then I'd write it down. So when I'd come in and measure it, then I'd just set my delay to that.
Let me ask you this. I mean, this is all very hair splitty stuff. Were you always, so I heard a story about Schenker that at sound check, he would walk around and find the spots where he could get the best feedback, and he'd put an X on the stage and like, here you go. Now this is where I know I can hit the sweet spot and I can really make some shit happen. Yeah. So you can confirm?
I never seen him put an X down. Now, I never really seen him really do that much at sound check like that. During the shows, when he's playing, he finds the spot, and so for years he'd have a monitor in front of him, and the only thing in that monitor is his guitar. He'd throw a towel over the horn, and he'd have him pull the top end back a little bit, and so he would hear it coming at him, and then he'd hear it coming from behind him, and he'd find that spot where right between them that it sounded perfect to him. He'd kind of get a little feedback. He'd get a little, a thing going. And he had noisy amps, because he had those 600s, and the transformer was on the wrong side. That's why they were noisy. They were either real loud or really loud. The hum, you didn't notice it in the mix. You didn't notice it. You noticed it if you wore in-ears in between songs. You'd hear, But I remember being in Turkey, and he's soloing, and he kept walking like off stage, and he was over on the side of the stage. There was this pipe, like a plumbing pipe or something, like this big around, and he was playing. I'm like looking over thinking, what is he doing? And so we asked him afterward, why are you over there playing? And he said, it sounded the best right here. I have to do it right here. It is awesome. And we're like, well, it's kind of weird. People pay to see you play, and you're like,
right.
And but so, and it's funny because we were on tour, and I kept telling him that he should just have some cabinets made, like little monitors with just, 12-inch speaker or whatever, and just run it from a head, it's a secondary head, and have them on the stage. Said, put a volume pedal there,
Mick
so that way you can control it. That way you don't have a monitor guy ever deals with you. You have your stuff. So then I mentioned it so many times, and there was a tour I couldn't do that Elliot, the guy that owned Dean Guitars, he had filled in for me on bass and did this tour. And sound guy finally got Schenker to do this. They actually got some powered wedges. He had a little mixer. He put mics right on his cabinet, and it would go right to there, so he controlled it. And so now he still does that. If you see him walking across stage now, right in front of the wedge he's at will be a volume pedal, so he can turn it up and down. Wow. And and that's so he can always have that, And but as for the market and X, I never seen that. But
maybe it was a mental X.
He does, and he does. I mean, no, I can see it because we would come in. A sound check consisted of, we'd come in, you do a line check or whatever, he'd noodle around. Okay, you ready? Okay. And we would play a certain song, whichever, whatever was picked for that tour. We'd play that song for about a minute and a half, the PA off. So it's just stage volume and monitors. And then we'd play it for a minute and a half with the PA on. Okay, perfect. And then that was it. He just wanted to see what the difference between the house being on,
right,
to that sound, and and he would just and he'd deal with it. I mean, he didn't care. He'd walk up and play. We didn't have to do sound check. That was just something. So it was dialed in for him mentally. you know, and then we would do a chorus of a song with, you know, backup vocals, and that's it. You know, that was an everyday, you know, routine that he does. And I guarantee he still does it. He might, you know, they might do a little more now, but I really doubt it. You know, he's very, he's always been a very routine person. You know, during the first rehearsals of a tour, the beginning of the year or whatever, after we got the set down how he wanted it, then he would record us playing without him. So he would have a recording to practice to.
Oh.
And it's funny because he also would pick, like, you know, because there's so many recordings of these songs over the years. So he would pick, all right, I want to do this version of this song, you know, from a live album, you know. And so basically it's that he wants to play at that speed. He wants to play it that arrangement, you know, and because he's been practicing to it. And it's so weird because 2006 we were on tour, and he kept thinking that we were slowing down on this song, and he kept, like, he would complain, "Oh, you and Pete are slowing down." And we're like, "No, we're not." So Pete, the drummer, he'd hit the metronome on while we're playing, and he'd watch it just to make sure that we weren't, and we were dead on. And, "Oh, you were slowing down." And then I finally just I thought about it for a second. I was like, "Well, what version are you listening to?"
The recording speeds up.
It. Yeah, so he picks it, and it's when Cozy Powell's in a band. And Cozy Powell's an amazing drummer, but any live thing that I've ever heard of him, his tempo goes, just takes off. And it's what it was doing exactly in these spots that he thought we were slowing down. He was just taking off, you know. And it's so funny because he got so used. Michael was judging his guitar solo.
Right.
He got so used to playing it to that. He wasn't even listening to them speed up. He just knew that his run was getting faster. And now he's trying to do that. Now he's speeding up and we're not, you know. And so we had to, from that point, it was always, okay, everybody make sure that if it's one of those recordings, everybody kind of, you know, try to speed up a little bit here and there, you know. And
that's amazing.
It's funny. It's funny how those little things that, you know, would throw it. But he, you know, that's why he's such an amazing player. He plays all day long, you know. Like I said, he would have the recording of our show and he'd play to it 2 or 3 times a day, you know.
And I know that. I mean, you mentioned it earlier. You mentioned Jeff Beck earlier, but every time I see Schenker play, I walk away thinking, as far as touch, like stylistically, obviously they're very different, but as far as his touch, like they're in the same league, I believe.
Oh yeah. I mean, having heard so many of these great guys in my ears, you know, it's like one of the things that, you know, if you're a Schenker fan, there's all these things that you notice, but the things that I noticed having it in my ears that close were things that nobody else would ever even notice, you know, like these little nuances that he does when, you know, when he's like doing a little trill thing, you know, he does these things. And it's funny because I used to witness it at him just warming up and, you know, waiting to do a sound check. And these little runs that he would do, I'd start hearing in the solo. He would work on these things and then figure out where to put them in the solo, because about half of the solos are improvised. You know, the ones, some of them have to be dead on, like they are in the album, but then the other ones they're improvised. And it's funny because on his set list he'd have the key solo next to it because he's improvising. So you know, he just looked at, okay, it's, you know,
right.
And but, you know, everything else he was playing, you know, he was playing note for note. But so when you get to Rock Bottom, and he would do the, you know, a 12-minute solo in the middle, and the nights that he was incredible. I mean, like I almost had a tear in my eye. It was so cool. Were the nights that people would go, yeah, it was all right.
Right.
Because it was so out of his normal realm, I guess, you know. It was a little too jazzy. And he would do a run and it would kind of not work. And he would kind of look at me and giggle, you know, like, yeah, because he was having fun doing it. He was having fun. You know, he's like being challenged. And that's what's to me, whenever I think of all these players, like Leslie West had just a natural thing about him. He had that tone. He could hit the note and just hold it forever. Didn't matter what guitar, what amp,
Right.
He had that natural thing. His, he was just Leslie West. He was what he is, Michael is so different from that, like he is what he is, but he does so many things. There's so many elements that he uses and that he's not scared to use, songwriting wise, he tends to be more of a kind of a structure, the way he writes, more so of kind of the same thing. He sounds like a Michael Schenker song,
Sure.
He doesn't really explore like, all the realms of the writing part, but his solos, every time it's going to be different. It's he's one of the few guys that you could actually, you hear it and it's him, but it doesn't sound like this solo,
Right.
I mean, over the years you can definitely tell. And it's funny because those are little things that a lot of people don't notice. And there's a friend of mine, Kristen Capolino, you might know her. She's a guitar player out there in New York. And she actually played a song on my newest solo album. And she's amazing. She plays Schenker exactly like Schenker. And it's funny because she does things that other people don't notice that he does. Like
Right.
when I played a gig with her and I'm hearing, we were playing Into the Arena or one of those, and she was doing something that I was like, man, I've never heard anybody else do that, that she doesn't even realize she does it. She picked it up, but doesn't even realize, and it's,
Sure.
she sounds so much like Schenker that whenever we were recording the drums on the song, because the solo was already done, Jeff thought that I'd got Schenker to play on it, the drummer, because he played in UFO and he played in MSG as well. So he was the same way. He hears all those little things. And I had to compliment her. And I had to tell her that,
Right.
all these things that sounded like that. She didn't even know. She got, she kind of blushed up, like, kind of like, she didn't even realize how much, but same deal. She plays Gary Moore. She sounds like Gary Moore, and because it's not
Right.
just about playing the notes. It's about finding that vibe, but yeah, so Schenker, he's probably one of the top guys of all times, and not just because I was in a band with him, because
Without
he is,
argument. Like
Paul Gilbert, same way, I mean, I had the pleasure
Sure.
of playing with Paul Gilbert. Paul's just, it's like second nature, amazing. He could grab an acoustic off the wall that has action like this, the biggest strings in the world. He starts playing some Mozart thing, and you're just like, stop. My brain can't
you've
follow
seen
you.
the video of him playing the upright bass like a guitar, right?
Oh yeah.
It makes me so angry and happy at the same time.
Yeah, well, he literally, with the thing on the guitar. So we were at his house. They were doing they were recording what's that? It was a Racer X album. It was either Getting Heavier or Superheroes. It was one of those. And we went there. We went to Paul's house. He lived in Vegas, and they were recording while we were there. And so then I went back and I did some pre-production on one of Paul's solo albums, and we were sitting there at the table, and he literally grabbed this acoustic that it was real hard to play. And he was like, yeah, I'm working on this Mozart thing. And he started playing it, and his fingers are like this long,
Right.
And it's just so nonchalant. And I'm just looking at him like, really? I mean, he just had, he's like a big kid, he's always joking. He has so much fun with everything he does in life, but, and then his playing, no matter who he's playing, like, we actually did a song on a Jeff Martin album that him and Michael Schenker go back and forth on the solo, and you can't tell. And Paul purposely played in a Schenker style, and you really can't tell which one's which. I mean, it's like it's identical. We did it on purpose because of the way the song was, structured, and it was supposed to just be Michael playing, and Michael only did every other, every other time through it. So, I mean, it's those kind of guys that they're just unbelievable players for all those reasons,
Let
And
me
then
ask you
that all
this.
falls back to what we just talked about with being perfect. I'm going to do that. Nope, I'm going to redo that.
Right.
Cut and pasting and all that. Those guys don't do that. I mean,
Right.
every time I seen Michael record, it was straight through. He would go back and punch stuff, but it was never, let's do this and that. They might do it now, but I guarantee it's still mostly done that way. Same with Paul Gilbert. When he did his solo albums and stuff, they'd record the songs live, then he'd go back and fix the vocals, fix any solos, but because he had that vibe, and it's not about having something that's exactly perfect. It's about having
Right.
something that sounds that way, but same with Leslie. We still had that style of recording on his last two albums that I did with him, that he didn't want to redo anything. I remember
Right.
there was one note. I mean, he's got the most amazing singing voice anyway, but he had one note that was just a little flat, and he was like, "Ah, it's fine." He just would not,
I
and you
love
would
that.
never even notice. You
That's
would
what I
never even
want.
notice the note. Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing, But
Let me ask you this. I want to talk to you about how, like, what made you pick bass over the guitar, right? Who were you listening to? What inspired you to do the over the neck thing and get into the tapping? Because tapping is, as far as there's Eddie Van Halen, there's Stanley Jordan,
yeah,
there's a few people out there, but not a lot of people are attacking it,
no.
and certainly not ferociously on the bass. And so I'd like to get in your head a little bit about how that came together for you.
Well, when I first, I always liked the bass better. I mean, I really didn't even like it. Obviously, just like most people, I didn't really realize what the guitar is doing and the bass and the
Sure.
vocals. And the vocals are easy because you hear words every day, so you can grab it. Most people can't even tell you what the bass is doing. If it's a saxophone, what is that? Where are those notes? Even guitar players sometimes when they're trying to learn the notes, they can hear the melody, but the timbre of the instrument, But I always liked the bass, all the songs because I loved Yes and King Crimson and uh, Rush, all those kind of bands. And so I used to think that it was mostly wanting to play bass because, like I said, Pete Way, he looked so cool, at the bass, Steve Harris, all those guys. And I used to think it was more of that, and which is kind of what started me being more visual.
Sure.
But as I became a bass player and started, going back and learning every song ever written, I realized that the stuff that I grew up listening to, it was the bass that, so there was that thing that I didn't really, know, but so because of that, I always gravitated towards those, and also, like I said, me not being stuck into, I was a huge Judas Priest fan. If I would have just been a Judas Priest fan, then I would play like Ian, and I would just drive notes, and that would be my gig, But I was into all the other bands. I was into Sly, Sly Stone is one of my favorites. Stevie Wonder, all that stuff. So when I started learning bass, I automatically started trying to learn those songs, and then going back to the doing the stuff over the neck, that part of it was the visual, and I'm not even sure who I've seen do it first. I've seen lots of people, play. I think the first accomplished people I've seen playing over the neck would have been when I seen Talus, and they were on tour with Yngwie, and Mitch Perry was playing guitar, and obviously Sheehan, and they would both be playing over the neck, doing this stuff, and it was so cool that they were both doing it. So I was already like doing stuff over, but not really anything hard. And I didn't really learn it from them. I think that was, I seen them do it. And I was like, man, that's cool. So it's something that, I do every now and then. And I used to, my opinion of learning is more in here than practicing. You know, I mean, practicing is great. It makes you better, but it's in here. So, I mean, when I get on stage, even to this day, if I'm playing and I'm coming into a run or something, and in my head, I'll think, all right, go over the neck and do it. Even if I've never done it before, I've never ran this thing. It's more challenging for me, you know. So I'm like, I wonder if I can do that, and I'll do it. All right, cool. You know, it's like a little game that I'm playing that nobody even knows when I'm doing it. You know, and it might be even very last second. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna try. Okay, I'm doing it. You know, and it's, you know, it's just one of those things that when I was doing it, when I'd only been playing a year, I was already playing like this. I was already using the other hand. You know, I just wasn't. I hadn't mastered it. I wasn't. You know, now you can go back and see the stuff from when I was about 20 years old when I started playing in Forte, and the bass lines I played on that album are hard for me to do now. I mean, they were so complicated. I was doing this, my head spinning in a circle with this ponytail, and, you know, jumping around acting like an idiot, flawless, you know. And when I see the videos of it, I'm like, wow, you know, it's something that I didn't even realize was happening, that developing, you know, like you always hear, oh, keep doing it, you're going to get faster and you're going to get better, and you know, and people give up because they don't see it, you know. And I just never paid attention, and all of a sudden one day I could do that, you know. Kind of like the tapping. I actually my style of playing with both hands, there's stuff that's, you know, from Eddie Van Halen. There's going to be obviously stuff from Billy Sheehan because he was doing it on bass. But most of it is probably from Tony Levin, you know, because he's my favorite bass player, but because he played Chapman Stick, you know. So, you know, if you go to King Crimson Elephant Talk, so I had to learn how to play that on a bass, you know. And he was on a 10-string Chapman Stick, so it's easier because the bass is here and the melody, and he tuned it because it's a flatted, it's a chord, but it's a flatted fifth, so it's tuned that way. So he only had to use one finger. I had to do it on a bass with 4 strings, and so I had to figure out, and I had to move to different strings because if I needed this note, and so that's kind of where I developed it more. You know, I mean, I would do runs. Once you start using the other hand, you got to figure out what's cool, and a lot of it was for this. You know, you've seen me doing it because a lot of the stuff that I play tapping would actually be easier if I was doing it as a, you know, with one hand, you know,
not tapping.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this stuff would be easier if I was doing it just as a run, but it wouldn't sound the same. Wouldn't have that, you know, it's kind of like the cool thing on a piano. When you run on a piano, it's the hammers. It's the hammers hitting the strings. So you get that, you get that percussive. But at the same time, then there's things that I did like where I'll tap a unison note, something you can't do on a piano because the hammer can only hit time, you know. So if you had 2 pianos, you were going, you know, if you're doing that, I can do that on bass because I have those notes, you know, different strings. So I started doing that, and that started kind of making this other thing that I do, you know, making a rhythm out of both hands, you know, that you really can't tell. You know, it's like, what is that? You know, is that you know, is he playing it? You know, am I playing it with a pick, chording? You know, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, it's kind of hard to tell what it is, but it's something that was developed that way, you know. But the same deal, running scales, you know, a lot of that happened on stage as well because I'm into the improvised thing. So I'd be playing and, all right, I got enough time to get from G to G before I go to the next chord, and in my head, I think, try it, you know. And if you do it on stage, it takes away that fear, you know. I know people that practice stuff all day long, scared to do it in front of people until they get it down. You know, they'll take a metronome, they'll speed it up until they get it. But if you do it once on stage in front of people, oh, I got it. Next time you think about doing it, like you already got it. What?
Right.
So you have, those kind of things. And it's funny because when for a while, I had a war guitar, 12-string war guitar, that Chapman stick, and both of them. And I played them for a while. And it was cool because you have all these strings. So you have just
a lot of possibility.
There's no limit on what you can play. But at the same time, it wasn't as fun. Trying to figure out how to do it on 4 strings is awesome. Even going to my 6-string, I have more strings. It's not as fun to tap on it as the 4-string. It's this little challenge thing that makes it kind of, kind of cool. But and then it comes to that whole thing of that too. How some people play, they play real soft, to try to do it. And I don't. I mean, I just play the same. I'm hitting this. I can sit and hit the string with this finger and that finger the same as if I'm playing with the pick or my fingers. It's all. It's like playing drums. You have to play as loud as your drums are. So
sure,
if you're sitting there playing and your snare's so loud and you play your hi-hat real soft, all you're going to hear in that hi-hat mic is snare. Sure. So you learn to play both of them the same, the bass drum, everything, all your toms. Otherwise, you played your snare hard and then, like this on the toms, it would sound awful, So that's something that is just developed playing, But a lot of that, like I said, a lot of that comes from, Tony Levin, probably, I mean, I didn't even know a lot of the stuff he did that I love. I didn't even know he played on for years, and there's something about it, how he plays, just his choice of notes, the Peter Gabriel stuff is amazing, King Crimson
I just
stuff's
saw a
amazing.
clip of him doing the John Lennon with Bunny Carlos.
Bunny Carlos, yeah, because they played on that,
Oh God, it was I had no idea.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that he played on that he's not. I don't even think he's credited for fully as the bass player. And there's always so much stuff that who knows, because there's so many guys that were like that, and they all fight.
He might have been on
like
Shout at the Devil.
He might could have been, yeah. But it's but it's great to find out later. Oh yeah, and I've met Tony, probably 6-7 times and got to talk to him and sit and hang out and and he's awesome, and I told him that he's the reason I look like this, the tattoos and all the weird shit. those songs, those weird King Crimson songs,
Oh man.
But yeah, so that's how all that kind of developed. I mean, people automatically assume that it's more of a Billy Sheehan thing because he does it. And I love Billy's playing. Billy's a great person. I love everything about all that. But that's really not where I got most of it. And I think he got some of it probably from the same places, but it's that developed. Once you start doing something, it's like if I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Manring.
Sure,
he's like the bass god. Same deal with him. He took lessons from Jocko. But when he plays a Jocko song, he didn't play it like Jocko. It didn't even sound like Jocko. He plays it in this, and he'll play a completely different position too, because that's how I do. You play how you play. I mean, I can play every Jocko song, and it'll sound, oh yeah, wow, he's playing all the notes and it has the right feel, but it sounds like me playing Jocko. Which is what you want. I mean, when I play the mountain songs, or the West Bruce Lang songs, I play just like Felix or Jack Bruce would have played, but it sounds like me. You might actually, I mean, there's times when people hear it and go, man, you played it note for note, just like, I'm like, no, I didn't. Go listen. And it's not, it's just I know that this is what Felix would have done there. And so it sounds like Felix, or it sounds like Jack Bruce.
Right.
Yeah, it fits the song, but it's not the, exact same thing, which is what, that's what you want,
Someone asked me today, a friend of mine on the phone asked me like, hey, you've learned, I don't know, this year I learned, 70 songs for tour.
Yeah.
And that's a mountain of work, right? But I realize that I have
Mountain.
there's a methodology to the way I learn music, and especially if there's stuff that I'm not familiar with at all, which that happened this year. I had to learn music that I'd never heard, and
Yeah.
and I told them, well, I listen a lot.
Yeah.
I listen before I ever pick up the instrument, and I'm wondering,
Yeah.
what is when you are learning or prepping for a tour or for a new gig or whatever, how do you go about doing it?
Well, like I said, I've had this ability to learn songs. I mean, when I was first started, I used to learn Randy Rhoads stuff for guitar players, and I couldn't play it. I mean, I'd be able to play the notes real slow, but I could hear it. I mean, I remember learning D and showing it to everybody. And to this day, there's still 3 things in that song that I'd never see anybody do right. That I'll go to my grave knowing that that's how you did it, because there's this weird harmonic in there that I
Right.
hear every time, and people do it in a different place, or it's an overdub. No, it's not, because I play it all, and I did that when I was 16 years old. I'd only been playing a year, and I figured that out. And I think it's just that listening thing.
Yeah.
Some people get, when you're trying to learn a song that seems really hard and it ends up being real easy, your brain doesn't let you. Oh, it can't be that. You're thinking, oh, it's got to be this weird. Oh, I got to have both
Right.
hands, and then you realize it's it's all in one position, and you're like, So it's that. And to this, I mean, I used to sit and I'd pick like a band, say Led Zeppelin. Never was a big Zeppelin fan. I loved the songs, loved the band, love all the players. I just never was. That was never my thing.
Yeah.
But I know every song.
Well,
I'm
John Paul
going to learn.
Jones, he's a bad
Yeah.
man.
I'm going to learn them all. Yeah. So I'd go and I'd learn all the songs on the album, note for note. Okay, boom. Next. And then, all right, I'm going to go, let's go, get learn a bunch of Greg Lake, so, King Crimson or any of that stuff. And I'd sit and learn all the songs. Okay. And then I'd go, all right, I'm going to pick this. And I used to do that constantly. I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed sitting and learning, and
Sure.
picking up little, wow, I never noticed that happens, I'd never noticed this happens, and it's kind of like they used to do in school. You used to have music appreciation, and it sucked because it was classical music. So, they would try to tell you the difference between this period and that period, and it all sounded the same.
Right.
It's all, it's all this, crazy, happy, stuff. But at the same time, I get what they were trying to teach. And I wish I could teach a class like that now to show you, all right, well, let's all listen to this. Now tell me what you heard, tell me what bass line you heard, each
Right.
person's going to hear a different one. Even if you know the notes, you play the notes. That's not really what's going on, because, it's, and it's all in that vibe of why something sounds a certain way, like you can go through, you can listen to bass players from the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. You can hear that they all play differently.
Yeah.
It's that everything evolves, or, whatever. And you can actually listen to it just like country. You can hear country and go, oh, that sounds like this era. You can listen to rock. Oh, that must be the 70s. That must be the early 80s. You can do that. And that's kind of what they were trying to teach in those classes. But because it was classical, nobody, paid attention and learned that,
Sure.
But when I'm listening to stuff, I'm listening to really what's going on, I'm not just listening for the bass part. I'm listening, what's the vocal doing? What's the keyboard doing? What's the guitar? Where's it falling in the groove, then I learn. I like to know what's going on and then learn it. But I mean, hell, I've had to learn when I played with Fuel in 2004. Part of the deal was I used his basses because he was going home for 2 weeks to 7 weeks. He didn't know yet. So they didn't want to have me fly basses out and then have to fly them, they'd have
Sure.
to have a place for his. They didn't want his bass tech getting out of, the rhythm of this bass goes with this song, because it was every 2 songs he changed basses. And so I said, yeah, no problem. I'll use your bassist. So, and he sent me a board recording a week before the tour, because I was on tour with Michael Schenker. And I asked him, I said, well, how are they tuned? He said, well, I'm not even sure. I'd have to go through, and I'll have my bass tech tell you which bass is tuned with the songs,
Yeah.
Like, I was like, well, because the way he said it, I was like, well, you don't even know how they're tuned. It kind of was weird. So I'm just imagining maybe that they're all weird tunings,
Right.
And then, so I listened to it every day, but I couldn't learn the songs, because the problem is, if you learn a song wrong, you can't get it out of your head.
That's right.
You're going to keep playing. So I couldn't learn the songs. I could listen to them and I knew the songs, but I didn't know, like, I hadn't sat down and tried to play any of the notes. So I did that listened to it for a week. Then I got to the first gig. I watched them play, and then we rode on a bus from Maine to Atlanta, and I learned the songs in the back of the bus with the guitar player. I mean, with the bass player. He just, and we just played along, and it was like, well, and it was a standard, a drop D, then it was a standard 5-string with a drop A, and I actually could have done it all in one.
There
on
wasn't
one bass,
like
I could have just
right.
no. I thought maybe it's tuned in fifths, maybe it's tuned as an open, because I do that with I do that on my songs, I have several different tunings, but so I actually learned all the songs in the back of a bus overnight and played the next day,
Right.
Which, and I've done that several times where I've had to, you got a gig, you got to learn all these songs overnight, but it's remembering them isn't a problem, because I can remember lyrics from when I was 2 years old, to England Dan and John Ford Coley song comes on the air, and I can sing every word of it.
Right.
And songs that I haven't heard since then, it's, so there's something in my brain that remembers those things, but learning it, it's because I listen to the parts, I mean, a lot of people, I think, overly analyze things like, oh, what time signature is that? And to me, everything's in one.
Right.
There is no 7/4. Everything's in one.
Right.
And because you're actually playing the riff. If you're counting, tapping your foot, you're not playing music.
Right.
It's this. And so when I'm listening for the bass part or the whatever I'm learning for the song. But I'm also, when I'm learning that, I know, okay, this is what the guitar does. So that makes me remember that, because then when I'm playing the song with them, I hear all those parts. My brain's, oh yeah. So I'm fine.
It's interesting
I'm not
to me
thinking
that
about it.
you have an ensemble approach, although you didn't play in school band.
Well, so I did for one month when I was in 1 month. I was not a go to school all the time guy. It interfered with my with rehearsal and stuff.
Sure.
So I got kicked out of school. I guess I was about 16, 17, I guess maybe. And I got kicked out of school because I missed too many days or something. And they asked me what I did, when I'd leave school early or whatever. And I said, I go to band practice. So she's like, hey, she said, I have this school for you to go to. It's called Cleveland Innovative Center. And so at that school, you had math, English, and history, I guess. I don't even think you had science. You just had 3 classes. And then the other 3 classes were either drama or art or music. So, and they had the number 1 stage jazz band in the state. They'd win every year, all the competitions, So her friend was the teacher. So she got me into the school, and I was there for a month until I got kicked out because I didn't want to do my English and all that. But so they had, and I love jazz because of the Jocko stuff, but, and I listened to all this jazz, but I never really played it, so I get there and they're all reading music, and it's all done. And I couldn't read music. I could read, I could sit and, okay, that's a C, it's an E.
Right.
So I took the charts and I kind of wrote out in pencil, all right, okay, this is the intro. And then it would go into the song, whatever, like say the first song I did was All of Me, So I figured out, okay, this is where the song starts. It's always going to be the same chord progression. So I just wrote the chord, all right, that's a C, and then it's going up to E7th, and I wrote that out over each one. And so when I'm sitting there playing, I'm just looking to where the notes are falling in, So bum 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 bum. I'm just playing a note where there's a note written,
Right.
and I'm playing off of the C. So I'm improvising what the notes I'm playing. I had no idea what the melody is on the bass, but I'm doing this. So they already had a bass player, So you first get there, you audition, because you're either gonna be first chair or second chair. You're either gonna be
Sure.
loud or turned way down on the amp, So we literally played through the song, and the teacher comes over and he says, "That sounded great. You can't read, can you?" And of course, I didn't realize he wrote the charts.
Right.
He's the teacher. Oh yeah. And he's like, I said, "No, I can't." And he goes, "Well, jazz is about improvising. You get to be first chair."
Oh.
And so the bass player that they already had, he had to move over to be a guitar player. And so I did that for like a month till I got kicked out of school. But that teacher got me an audition with this jazz band that played at all the restaurants.
Oh, wow.
So I go into audition. It was the first time I auditioned for a band. I was 17. I go in, and it's at like this, you're auditioning at the supper club they play at. And I walked in, and I'm watching these other old guys all audition. And I think the youngest person in the band was like 80. I mean, the piano player had to be like 95. He had a cigarette in his mouth. There was one burning here. He's soloing like this, drinking, and it was amazing. I'm just watching him, and I'm with that teacher, and I'm like, I can't do that. I'm watching these guys play upright, and he's like, you just get up there and do what you do in class. So I got up there, and they said, well, what do you want to play? And I said, well, let's do All of Me, because that was, my little thing, and we play it. I'm improvising. And then it comes to a bass solo, and I'm all do 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 do, start doing all this shit. And
you're doing the tapping and stuff.
Yeah, this is never gonna work, And I got hired. And I probably played 20 shows with that band, and when I was 17, into turning 18, and then I stopped doing it. But that's where I learned how to improvise, because you just have chord charts. Right. And the guy would yell out sax, and sax would take the next solo. So you wouldn't even know you were about to solo until bass, right. And so it was cool. I mean, and it was all like big band jazz.
Right.
So it was cool. I don't think I would enjoy playing it, now.
Do you play upright bass at all?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do.
Do you have an electric or an acoustic or both?
Yeah, so I have both electric. So I have a normal scale electric one that actually plays kind of like just having a fretless bass. It's a little wider, but it's flat, so you can't bow on it, and you also it's like 2 octaves. So I mean, you don't have to relearn positions,
Right.
I actually like it better because it sounds like the upright, and it makes more sense.
But it's more
But
familiar.
But then I also have a full double bass, and it's electric as well. And it plays. It's like a true, you got a neck
Crazy
about like this radius,
right.
Yeah, so you can get the bow over. You really have to play the note, it's not going to sustain, that right way, it's a Dean, so it has a longer scale on it. You get into thumb position, it's longer, but it still has the problem that it's so big,
right.
You can't, I got a case for it, but it's still so hard to, you're not going to take it on the road. The other one is here, I'll show you the other one.
I want to get an upright,
so
and
here,
I've considered getting an electric. Well, yeah,
style.
Look at that.
So I mean, but it's flat. But it's like playing. I mean, it's you don't have to relearn how to play your instrument.
Right.
The other one The other one is still full size. It's the case is as tall as me. So
Right.
it's not, I can barely fit it in my car when I go do gigs.
Right. Well, that's
But,
one thing that's stopping me. I've got a short bed truck. It's like a 5-foot bed.
Yeah.
Like I can't even fit a bass back there.
Yeah. Well, and I'd love to have an upright, acoustic one, but
Yeah.
it gets so humid here, that thing would bust into a million pieces,
Right.
Plus, there's
Right.
nowhere to put it where I just have to lean it against a corner somewhere, So,
Yeah, got it.
but yeah, I like the electric ones, because then you're not having to worry about it's going to sound the same in your amp,
Right.
So I just use an AB so I can pretty much have the same sound. It's going to be slightly different, but you don't have to worry about another amp because once you're getting into that, then
Yeah. I'll check the Dean out. I'll check that one out.
Yeah, they're called it's called a Pace bass. One of them is the Dean Pace. The other one is the Dean Pace Contra.
Got it.
So,
I'm having a great time. I feel like I could talk to you for fucking hours, but I want to wrap it up pretty soon. I want to ask you a couple more questions.
Mm-hmm.
You were clearly a lifer.
Yeah.
I can't imagine you going down to the Dell's Auto Parts and becoming the manager there because you are disenchanted with music. You exude music. What what keeps you going, I guess is the primary question, but I'd also like to know if you have any happiest moment. Like, is there a moment or a period that stands out as the most inspiring that you've in your life? And then and also when things are let's be honest, like it's a feast or famine. We have a feast or famine lifestyle, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
During famine, how do you keep it going? How do you keep your head together? How do you keep motivated?
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of me not being scared of doing other things in music. It's funny that a lot of people go, "Oh, wow, you do lights? Yeah. Oh, you're a guitar tech." But if you said that, "Oh, I'm a producer who really does nothing," as Dimebag told me whenever we were talking about those Pantera albums, what did Terry Date do? He brought his drinks. He wasn't being serious. He wasn't being dead serious, but he was. He's the producer. He's not. And it's true. I mean, some people go far beyond on it, but that's always accepted as, oh wow, he's a producer. He's bigger than the artist almost. But they think differently of it. But it's anything to do with music. If you can, it'd be like if you're an athlete, a pro, whatever sport. When you retire, you automatically try to become a commentator or a coach,
car dealership owner.
Yeah, well, exactly. But you try to stay within. A lot of people are smart. They do that. They go buy business, and they're the face of it. But you always try to stay in the sport because you know it so well.
Right.
I mean, and so it's the same in music. I mean, I know people that I love teaching. I love playing. Anything. I love. The reason I like being a guitar tech too is that I work on all my basses anyway. I set them all up. I do all this stuff to them, so I automatically already drawn to that. And to me, it's killer. I love working on guitars. I love watching George Thorogood play, hearing him play, and noticing things. Okay, I need to work on that. That when he gets to hear that guitar's, it's something that he wouldn't even notice, or he might notice, but there's something weird there. So the next day, I, figure out, I need to adjust this, and I helped whenever they came out with the Epiphone George Thorogood, I was involved in the whole process of getting the ones he used, exactly how they are. I was
Right.
in the whole designing and everything of it, because they took his old guitars and lasered it to make them, but that doesn't work because it's a
Sure.
Gibson. It was put together by hand, so you could have 100 of them, and the neck angle is not the same on any two. They're all different. So but because of my love of music and everything to do with it, that gave me another job. And I love doing it. And that also gets me. I mean, when I played bass at the 3 shows this year on tour, it was cool because I never played bass on the songs, and I didn't even learn them.
Right.
I hear them every night, so I knew them. And it was last minute. Bill had to fly home to see his family for 3 days, so it was like, all right, you're playing. I was like, okay.
And let's be
And
honest, it's not King Crimson.
Yeah. But and there's actually, here's the thing. Yeah, it's not King Crimson, but those are, Bill's a great bass player. Those
Sure.
are fun songs to play. I mean, they're all, the bass is all over. It's blues, so it's, it's cool. And I just did the same thing I always do. I played how I always play, and which is how you should do. And it's funny because, so those first times that I ever even stepped into a band that wasn't, because like I said, I played speed metal, and then I was in just like a kind of a heavy, this band Black Symphony, which was kind of like Rammstein, but with a singer, a different kind of singer,
Yeah.
And so I was used to that kind of stuff. So then when then I was in MSG, so then it was my style. So then when I went to play with Fuel, completely opposite of MSG, I was like, how am I going to be on stage? What am I going to do? And then I get on stage and I'm me. I didn't even think about it,
Right.
And it's the same deal. Then I get in Steelheart, and so when you look at how I am and what bands I played in, then you look at Steelheart, it's like, oh, that's completely different, different style. That's just, that's more of a Zeppelin rock. And what are you going to do? It's exactly, exactly the same. So then I get on stage with Thorogood, and I'm trying to, all right, I'm going to lay back a little more because, and next thing you know, I'm playing like this and doing this, and I'm acting the same. So it's those are things that happen. If I'm just sitting here in my room playing, I don't do anything.
Right.
When I get on stage, it's something that just happens. It's like it's kind of like I mean, no different the Elvis Presley thing. Just his little nervous. Imagine that once he realized that's cool, he started working on it. And everything I do that's cool, I probably worked on it, but it came by accident first,
Yeah, sure.
but then it's all second nature, but that's the part, that's where, like you said, the love of music, and I do love it. I used to love, what I miss actually in life was, I used to love sitting down, grabbing, we had against the wall, you had all your vinyl, leaning up again, just grabbing it and putting it on, putting headphones on, and just listening to, Night at the Opera or, Back in Black, whatever, and just listening to records all the time. And every now and then I'll get on a little thing where I just start, listening to old stuff I haven't heard. But that's one thing I kind of miss about, when you're younger, you actually have time for it. And,
you have a different level of enthusiasm at a younger age.
Oh yeah. And I get excited too, whenever if I'm in the car and, I got, the streaming music on, I'll be like, oh man, I'm going to go listen to, I'll just think of a band that I haven't heard in forever, Gamma Ray. I'm going to go listen to the Gamma Ray album or the first Halloween album, or, go back and, oh man, I'm going to, listen to Yes Relayer,
Sure.
you go back and hear this stuff. And it always automatically brings back that memory of doing it, like I always talk about Queen Night at the Opera, because we used to listen to it, start, flip it to finish, and all those things that go on in there, because it's got Bohemian Rhapsody, but it's got Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon, it's all the I go off to work on Monday, it's all the oddball stuff, the Beatley kind of stuff. Then there's those heavy, just, creepy songs, and then there's the, kind of weird love song, and then there's, everything is, and I just remember we used to sit and listen to it, and wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. And because of that, I know every part that's going on in those albums. And that's got another big reason why when I learn songs, it's easier,
Right.
because I used to listen and I knew, even when I hear them to this day, any little weird thing that happens in the background, like a little chime or something, my hand automatically goes to do it while it's happening.
Right.
Because because it was burned into my memory, but that's probably the thing about the creative side, like you were asking if I had the most creative, time, and it used to be sitting, and playing, just playing songs, when I was in that band Forte, the speed metal band, we would rehearse every day, but whatever we were listening to on the way to rehearsal, we would play every song by that band, for 2 hours before we'd even start playing ours. So if we were listening to, this is a speed metal band, but we'd be listening to Foreigner or something, and we'd get up there and, we'd play every song. You're as cold as ice. We'd play the whole album, and then the whole next album, the next day it might be, Megadeth. So we'd go in and play, every Megadeth song. And we all knew them. That was the one thing, is that band, we knew every song. I can still do that. I can still get up on stage and pretty much play any song that I've ever heard, and
That's great.
even the hard ones, I can get up there and fake it. Yeah. And you might think that I just played it exactly right, but I just faked it. I just fooled you. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the way, man.
Oh yeah.
That's the way.
Well, I used to tell people, if you hit a bad note, hold it and hit it loudly and look at everybody like they're wrong.
Yeah, well,
because everybody will go, the whole band hit the wrong note. The bass player was holding the note, looking at him. I knew he was right.
He's the only one that got it right.
Yeah, it's the ones that go, oh shit, like this. You just got to go.
Man, I've had such a great time talking with you.
Yeah,
you're an inspiring music figure.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. It's been a good chat here. I'm glad you invited me.
I wish you the best of everything in everything that you do. I hope you have a great 2023. I'm happy people are back to touring. I hope that you get, that reaches your sphere, and that everything is back to business.
Yeah, should be. I was out with Thorogood all this year. We did a little over 100 shows, and we were we did all of Europe, Australia, New Zealand. So we did a lot of countries this year, and we start back up in February to have another year, not as full, but another 80 shows. So
80 shows is good, man. You're still gone for 5 months,
Yeah.
Is it steady, or you come home for a couple weeks, go out, come home?
Well, this year was rough on for the family. I have a 6-year-old, and him and the wife missed me, and I missed them as well. But we did a lot of catching up because of stuff from the year before and the year before that had been moved. So there was a couple of runs where we came home for 8 days and then went back out for 3 weeks, came home for a week, went out for a month, came home for a month to go out for another month. And so that got pretty heavy on us. We have one more show this year, which is, it's great that we only got one more, but next year will be a little, more like a 3 week and then home for, 3 weeks and maybe a month, home for a month,
Right.
So, but, it's good. I mean, Thorogood still kills every night,
Yeah.
So it's amazing. This year we did Zus and Sammy Hagar most of the year, and both those guys 75.
Dude,
Unbelievable. Yeah, I don't know how Sammy Hagar can do it every night. Every song,
dude.
he's popping it, pouring it. There's no faking. It's not like the old days where you'd see Daily Rock and Jack Daniels and his iced tea. No, he's opening the bottle of tequila, pouring drinks in the front row. And you're just like, oh, and every time you look over,
too.
Oh, I know. And, same with Michael Anthony. Every time I'd be over on his world next to his tech, and he'd come over there and make me do a shot. Those guys just do it the whole time. And it's like, how do you even function?
Right.
And they've got 20 years on me, over 20 years on me,
Right.
So, but yeah, it's a good thing because you see that and it makes you realize that you're not too old. Some people go, I've been doing this too long. I'm too old for this. Music, there's no age really.
It'll keep you young.
Yeah, it does. So.
Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on. I'm going to kill this. Don't forget, stick around for a minute. I actually I want to pitch something at you, but we have to let this thing upload as well. So,
cool.
yeah, thanks again, man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.